The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website at agingpartners@lincoln.ne.gov.
Hello, I'm Jerry Renaud. Today on Live and Learn, we have a very special guest who has a very special story. It's local broadcaster Dale Johnson, who is going to take a story of tragedy and show how it turns into a positive. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Do you know what this is? I'm Kristen Stowes, and my guest, Wayne Casper, will talk about this and all things computer during our Technology for Seniors update today.
20 years ago, South Central and Eastern Nebraska were paralyzed by a surprise October snowstorm. I'm Kim Hachia, and my guest today will chat about that storm, its effects on the city, and what we've learned from it. Stay tuned.
I'm Lita Powell Drake, and today the George Churley puppets are going to be living again at the Nebraska History Museum. Don't touch that dial. Calamity Kate and the George Churley puppets, stay tuned.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Hello, welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud, for our segment today. You know, sometimes you can have something happen to you in life and you can think that it is perhaps the worst thing that has ever happened to you. And then something happens and it turns out to be one of the most positive things that's happened to you, and it can change your life, and then in turn you can change other people's lives. And that's the story that we have for you today. We have a very special guest. It is an old friend of mine, somebody that you know probably quite well. He has been in the radio business for a long, long time. Please welcome Dale Johnson, news director at KFOR. Dale, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Jerry. Good to see you.
We've known each other for a long, long time. That makes one of us old. I haven't decided which one yet.
But I remember, so if I remember that statement, then I'm equally as old, so we're on the same plane.
Okay, very good. All right, before we get into our story, why we're here, you know, you are a really good storyteller. You have an interesting story for us today, but you like telling stories. What is it about that, being in the radio business, that sort of compels you to and have to get up very early every morning to get out of bed and tell those stories?
3 a.m. I'm up.
I know.
And have been for over 30 years. Something you don't get used to, you just handle it. You know this from being in radio and early mornings too. But you have to be a good storyteller. You also have to be a good listener too, in order to interview, do what we're doing, engage in conversations. I don't interview, I engage in conversations with people. But you use your own life's examples to hopefully draw out of other people a little bit about their life. And you mentioned at the beginning how something so initially traumatic can turn into a positive. I think of a quote from Mark Twain, who says, "The two most important days in our lives are the day we are born and the day we find out why."
How true.
And for me, March 20th, 2016, helped me learn why. Because what it did, it changed me. It changed me not only physically with the loss of my left leg, but it changed me to appreciate other people and appreciate my situation and realize that, and you hear it all the time, Jerry, we hear it, we read about it, that life is so precious and life is just so fragile.
Yeah.
And you're going, yeah, I've heard that, it is. I'm hopping on my motorcycle, or I'm getting my car and I'm driving home. But for me, it was, and I've had the occasion of adding up the seconds that went into me being able to survive my motorcycle crash. And
yeah, let's back up just for a moment. For somebody who may not know, I mean, let's tell them what happened. Right. I hate to make you relive that day, but maybe you're sort of used to it at this point in time. But you were the proud owner of a new motorcycle and had gone out for a spin on that March day.
Right. My brother and I were planning on going to Sturgis that day. That's in August, so here we are in the middle of March. I get a new motorcycle for me, it was new, 3 weeks earlier, and I'm wanting to put as many miles of experience on it as I could before we head out to South Dakota.
You used to ride motorcycles,
right,
though.
Right, I had a smaller one prior to this, rode a lot as a kid, had one about in my 30s, decided it was time to get a hobby. So I bought another motorcycle, made plans to go to Sturgis. Beautiful spring, it's first day of spring, March 20th. Heading to the grocery store, 27th Street in Stockwell. We're stopped in traffic, and a young man in the turn lane doesn't see me, and he turns into my lane and hits me right on the leg. And I kept my balance as best I could, I think, and hit the curb and flew 21 feet onto the shoulder of 27th Street. And I had the pleasure, and I choose that word carefully because I met with the two firefighters and the medic on engine 4 who arrived first on scene. And so I know exactly when they left their station, when they were en route, when they arrived on scene, when they arrived at my side, and all of those seconds, Jerry, add up to me being alive today.
Were you conscious through all of this?
I was, and I intended that because I remember vividly not wanting to pass out because then I would be no good to anyone.
Did you feel like you could pass out? I mean,
no,
was it?
No,
okay.
I just willed myself to not pass out. I didn't want to. So I started listing names, my wife, my son, my name, addresses, phone numbers. And when I ran out, I just repeated them again because I wanted to be helpful for people. If they came up and asked me who can I call, I need to be able to tell them who I can call.
Sure.
What's the phone number? Where do you live? So I stayed conscious the entire time, which would have been from the time I hit the ground until the first emergency responder arrived, about 5 minutes. And as they approached me, they knew that it was bad. They could see my leg. And they initiated what they call a load and go, which is basically we're not going to IV him. We're just, the medic on board put a tourniquet on my leg. That saved my life. So we have seconds that count. We have an arrival time that was within their specs. We have a medic with a tourniquet.
So lots of people went into this process
and
that got you. They wanted you to the hospital.
Right. The last thing I remember is the sound of my leather jackets being cut. And I specifically said, "Don't cut my
Of
jackets."
course.
And the medic told me the other day, he says, "I just told you, no, we're going to cut your jackets." And that's the last thing I remember until I got to the hospital.
Okay, so let's talk at least briefly about the hospital, because you just as we were chatting before we went on, you told me an interesting story that that is not a part of, and I meant to mention this earlier, that the Living Well magazine is doing a fabulous story about Dale that's coming out, and we'll show you a little bit later in the program how you can get a copy of it or subscribe to the Living Well magazine. But you got to the hospital, and it was tough going for a couple of days.
I had lost so much blood on the scene and en route that, and ambulances don't carry blood. It's just perishable. So they provided me with solution and solvents, saline and things, fluids. Once I got to the hospital, they used 27 units of blood products on me to make me stable. You have 10 units, I have 10 units, the average is 10 units per body. So almost 3 times the amount of blood our body holds was used to try to stabilize me. I remember getting bored quickly once I woke up and was stable, and one of the first requests I had was to get out of bed. It's either day 2 or day 3 in the intensive care unit. I said, "Is there any way that you can get me out of this bed?"
Yeah.
There is a device that allows you to stand up and hold on to something and hop around ICU, which they wanted me to go half a lap. I said, "I'm going to go a lap." So we went around ICU once. I said, "Let's go again," and she knew better, thank goodness. She knew better, so we went back to the bed. But that started my, that was probably the first physical therapy that I had in ICU. Spent a total of 11 days in the hospital. Wonderful care at Bryan Health.
Okay, so you've made some progress. You're out of bed. You're starting to feel at least a little better, but you still had some anger.
It was one of the emotions I evolved into. Didn't have it initially, but as I'm lying there in bed, I'm thinking about the 16-year-old who hit me. And I make up my own story. I'm thinking this young man is going about his business, his life hasn't changed, where my life will forever be changed. And I was so wrong. But I got angry in the hospital. dismissed from the hospital, go about my rehab. I channel that frustration and anger into rehab.
Yeah, you took rehab pretty serious.
My chiropractor early on said, you have 3 months. You have a 3-month window. Whatever you can do in 3 months, after 3 months, your bones will start to be locked up. They'll basically be back to where they're going to be for the rest of your life. So you have a choice. You can either work hard and improve yourself in 3 months, or you can take a weekend off, take a week off, and then wish you hadn't. I never took a week off. I rehabbed every day. I remember sitting the very first time I sat in my living room and turned on the Rolling Stones and just rehabbed for an hour.
Yeah, when somebody said do 10 reps, you said, I'm going to do 100 reps.
I'm going to do 100. You tell me when to stop. I think there was a point sometime in the therapy session in the hospital, you tell me when to stop. And it hurt. But I knew that each time it hurt, the next one would hurt less, and the next one would hurt less, or the next 100th one would hurt less. So, channeling that anger into therapy. Went to Peru less than 6 months after the crash.
Yeah, that's incredible. Let's talk about that. That was something that had sort of been on your bucket list, or that you had planned for quite a while, and you had made up your mind you were not going to let this interfere with that.
No. The thought of climbing one of the 7 wonders of the world less than 6 months after losing my leg was my motivation. Going there and seeing what the civilization had done centuries and centuries ago, what they managed to accomplish. When I got back, I decided I need to move some weight too, and that weight was on my heart. And we contacted the young man and his parents and arranged a meeting.
What was that like? Because you had been reluctant.
I'd been reluctant initially. I was angry at this young man. I really was. And based upon nothing. I'd never met him. Walked in. We got there before he did. He arrived, and I said, looked him in the eye, and I said, you hit the right man. I didn't die. I drove here. I walked in. I'll walk out. I'll go to work. I'll grab my granddaughters later in the day. You hit the right guy.
And how did he respond to that?
I could tell it was really emotional, and it was words he was, I believe, thankful to hear. I said, I hope you're a better driver. I hope you get a good night's sleep, and let's just move on. And that was the best thing, one of the best things I could have done, because it unloaded that portion of my emotional baggage. I got rid of it. And I focused on the positives. I focused on things that I can do from this point on. And there's more that I can do than can't. It's a slower process to get there, but my son says, Dad, can you ... fill in the blank. So I've learned how to drive a tractor. I've learned how to throw bales. I've learned how, I now have another motorcycle. I've figured out ways to go up and down hills. There are ways to do things if you just set your mind to doing them, and I still get frustrated. I still get frustrated at the speed or the slowness at which I accomplish things. End of the day, I'm very tired. I do really more than this leg is capable of doing for me. And so I push this leg every day, and I'm in the process of trying to get something that's a little more technical. But every day I get up out of bed having to think about walking. It's something that most people never have to think about.
Right.
The last thing they think about is walking. But every step I take, I have to think about the effort that's required, or I could fall. And if I fall or engage in risky behavior, then I'm no good to anybody. Then I've receded, and I refuse to recede. I want to keep going forward and getting better for me, and hopefully conveying a message to others that makes whatever it doesn't have to be the loss of a leg. It could be socioeconomic problems at home. It could be a divorce. It could be your kids. It could be your job. It could be anything. Just realize that you can handle it.
Right.
You haven't been given that burden if you couldn't handle it. Is what benefits me every day, trying to convey a message to someone. I've talked to perfect strangers. People know me because of my voice. People I've never met. Got cards in the hospital, Jerry. You are the best friend I've never met.
Wow. That's nice.
And you get those cards and you hear this message, and it makes you realize that you are in a perfect spot at the perfect time to convey a perfect message to somebody if you just keep repeating that message.
And you were out there doing that.
Trying
on a regular basis.
Trying to. If it's not every day, it's every week, it's every month, trying to do something that puts me in a position of challenge to accomplish something or to get in front of someone or a group that can benefit from my life, what I went through. And it's not a pity party. I don't feel sorry for myself in the slightest. It's just something that happened, and let's move on and handle it.
You had a great support system too with your wife.
She's great. She's great. I tell people that my life changed completely. Her life was layered. She still had her daily routine, her job, but now on top of that, she has to take care of me. My life changed, and my dynamic is totally different. Hers is the same plus me. So for the 3 months I was home in short-term rehab, she was there. And she's still there. In Peru, you see the pictures. We're always holding hands. For 10 days we held hands,
wow.
Walking every step.
Very cool.
And she's in some ways stronger than me because of what she has to go through to help me out in mine.
Now, you know, a lot of people when I don't want to say we're old, but as we're getting older, can find a sort of a comfort in life that this is what I'm going to do. You don't do that anymore, do you? I mean, you really make it a point to say, I'm getting out there, I'm going to do this. You were talking about somewhere you were headed this week just to try to do some of those things.
I had an opportunity to sign up to go to Pine Ridge to do everything from build bunk beds for the kids to trailer skirts around the bottom of the mobile homes, build front steps, dig holes for fences. Not only am I giving back to people, but I'm also putting myself in a situation where I don't know if I can do it. To be honest with you, Jerry, I really honestly don't. I could be in weeds this tall, and that's tough for a guy with this kind of leg to walk in. How do I navigate that? I'll find a way. Well, I have to crawl. If I do, I'll find a way.
Yeah.
I trained for a firefighter for a day. Got in the boots, got in the clothes, got in the helmet, got the gloves on, went in and did a day's worth of firefighter training. And I told the guys, I said, I'll hold on to you, but don't coddle me. Don't say, Dale, I don't think you can do this. Let's get in there and let's do it as best as both of us can so that I can experience this and I can talk about it and build on this. Don't tell me I can't, and they didn't. We did everything that everybody else with two legs did. A little bit slower. I was at the end of the line,
yeah.
But and the last one out, but we did everything that the other trainees did.
Good for you. You're an incredible inspiration. I wish we had more time to continue on. Maybe you can come back sometime and tell us a little bit more about how things are going and what life is like. Dale is featured in the Living Well magazine, and if you would like to get a copy of it, I think we have. There's going to be the cover of the magazine, and I think we have a place. Here we go. So if you would like to subscribe to the Living Well magazine, that's who you contact, Deb Elrod. You see the phone number there, and you also see the email address. So we encourage you to do that. There's a lot of things in the article that we did not get a chance to talk about. You're a great inspiration. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
It's fun, Jerry. Good seeing you again.
And thank all of you for tuning in. And always remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Would you like to become more computer literate? My guest can help you conquer that technology. I'm happy to welcome Wayne Casper, Seniors Computer Consultant. Wayne, it's wonderful to have you on Live and Learn today.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. You know, this is an area that we all struggle with because technology is ever changing. What is the biggest hurdle for an older individual who hasn't been exposed to the computer world?
Well, if I may, I'll reminisce just for a moment. When I was 8 years old, in our older home, we had a telephone on the wall. It was a wooden box with an earpiece, a mouthpiece, and a ringer.
Sure.
And our number was 2 longs and 1 short.
Oh.
Okay, and it was a party line. And I will say this, that my mother totally enjoyed the party line, and you might equate it to social media. In the other part of your question is that as far as seniors are concerned, the one thing that all of us have to overcome is intimidation of using the computer, and changing, just the change alone causes frustration. You know,
I think we're all afraid we're just going to make a big mistake,
yeah,
and
well,
we don't want to
and
go
then
there.
see, a company like Microsoft has had 5 different operating systems in the last
Sure.
15 years. So there's change that, for us seniors, sometimes it's better if you just leave us alone.
Well, tell me, have you always been tech savvy?
Yes, to a certain extent. I built my own hi-fi set when I was a senior in high school.
Really?
In our physics class, we put together the turntable and the sound system, and then in the shop class, which they called it at that time, I built my own oak stereo cabinet.
Oh
so
my. Yeah, I think you've already always been tech savvy then.
Right, yeah.
Well, in the beginning of the personal computer market, there were 2 major players, Microsoft and Apple. What is the difference between those two?
Well, the first big difference between the 2 companies as far as their products are concerned is Apple products are considerably more expensive than Microsoft products. The other big difference between the 2 companies is that like an iMac or a MacBook, that type of product requires a lot less maintenance than a PC or a personal computer, which is run on the operating system called Windows. And Windows requires a lot more maintenance as far as keeping your computer tuned up. The yeah, that's probably the
that's the big one.
Yeah.
So we do have a computer graphic to put on screen of the components of a computer, and I believe you're going to explain the function of the system along with why it is important for the consumer to know how they're going to use a computer before purchasing one.
Right. There's what we call the big 3, and they're on the screen there, is the primary components of the computer itself.
Okay.
What we call the ICU, which is the operating system, or the processor. Also, there's a part of the computer called RAM, and then of course a hard drive. And going back to the processor just for a moment, there's 2 major companies that manufacture processors, Intel and Athlon. And processors are rated according to what we call clock speed, simply how fast they run.
Right.
And usually both companies then rate their processors with usually a letter and a number, like Intel i3, i5, i7, i9, and of course the higher the number, the faster.
Oh, okay, sure.
Right, and Athlon starts out with what they call an AMD 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, so on. But for most of us, just simply want to do like email and perhaps do a little searching on the internet, an Intel i3 would be very adequate. If you want to, like we talked before, if you want to do the gaming part of PCs, then you want to get up there in the i7 into the i9. The other component is what we refer to as RAM, RAM, and RAM stands for Random Access Memory. And it's a very important part of our computer in the fact that when you turn it on, your operating system goes into RAM. If you open up the internet, it goes into RAM. If you check your email, it goes into RAM. And maybe you're going to do some word processing, it's running into RAM. So in the earlier years, where we really ran into an issue with computer speed, was that if you didn't have enough RAM, your computer slowed down, and in some cases, it simply stopped. Okay?
Very frustrating.
Right, that was very, very frustrating. So RAM has become a really important component of the computer, and really in today's world, if you are purchasing a computer, I certainly would not go less than like 4 megabytes of RAM.
Okay, that's a good.
Now it goes on up. It's another one of those that go in like 4,
Sure.
6, 8,
Sure.
10,
So
12.
you really have to know how much you're willing to spend on a computer as
right.
well.
And as you get, higher speed, higher processor,
Okay.
more money.
Sure.
RAM is very inexpensive. I mean, you can go, and I guess I would add here is that if you're going to increase the RAM, at the time of purchase is when you should consider
Okay.
getting more RAM because it would cost you more later on to do
Okay,
it.
well, that's a very good recommendation. Well, I know you give classes. What is the biggest difficulty seniors seem to face when learning new computer skills? Do you do anything special with a seniors class?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We do, because first of all, in teaching the classes, our ultimate goal is to make them more comfortable in using their computer. So our teaching process was slow, and we had a lot of repetition.
Okay.
And because probably one of the most frustrating parts about a computer as far as seniors that have never used one was what I refer to as navigation.
Okay.
And that's just moving around and finding
Yes,
where
sure.
stuff is.
Yeah.
And it all starts with the mouse.
Okay.
The mouse, a lot of people have a tendency to want to drive the mouse, like all over the place.
Sure.
And you really don't have to. You just can do this and you
Pretty
can go.
subtle movements, isn't it? Yeah.
So
yeah,
movement.
exactly.
But navigation
Okay.
would be.
Navigation.
yeah.
All right. I believe you told me that staying safe on the internet was the #1 concern of seniors, and honestly should be for everyone. We do have a graphic to put on screen with some bullet points, and I know that you're going to address a few of these.
Yes. The first one is probably the most, well, shouldn't say probably, the first one is the most important part. If you are going to go on the internet, you definitely need some type of security protection, virus protection of some kind. And there's a lot of different companies out there that sell virus
Okay.
software. And probably the most important part about your virus software is keeping it up to date. And most of them that you pay for, now there's free ones and purchase ones, but those that you pay for automatically update on their own.
Okay, that's good.
And that's important.
Yes.
The other one down there that I won't jump to real quick is using a strong password and changing your password every now and then. But strong passwords, especially for any type of banking that you do online.
Sure.
And strong passwords simply require like maybe a capital letter, a small letters, a number, and some symbols.
Okay.
The other thing that if you are purchasing online, I know Amazon is a big company for a lot of people to purchase online, but when you get to the cart and it's time to give them your Visa card,
Yes.
you definitely want to look up at what we call the address bar,
Okay.
where the HTTP normally
Okay.
is, and there absolutely has to be an S,
Okay.
meaning secure.
Okay. All right.
If they're not an S,
That's a very good tip.
don't give them your
Right.
Visa card.
Right.
Then there's another one that I run. In fact, I just had one this week, and that's where your screen perhaps would go either blank or discolored, and there would be words like, "Don't turn off your computer or you'll lose all your files," and it says like, "Call Microsoft." Well, that's just a scam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely do not want to see that. I know you like flash drives,
Yes, I do.
and you have a great idea for creating backups of important files. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Well, first of all, this is a flash drive.
Okay.
And evolved from a floppy disk.
Okay.
A lot of us are familiar with the floppy disk.
Yes, we are.
And the flash drives, what has happened over the years, that flash drives have become larger in capacity as far as storage capacity, and the price has dropped dramatically. I mean, like this is an 8 gigabyte for like $4.95.
Terrific.
Okay. Now, the thing that I've pointed out for people that are backing up all their important documents, pictures, financial information on a flash drive, don't leave it in your desk drawer, but take it to the bank and put it in a safety deposit
That's
box.
a perfect idea.
Right, yeah, because that way then you know for
Yes,
sure that
yes,
it's secure.
you have that on that
Right.
little flash drive in your safe deposit box. There are so many areas where computers can really benefit seniors and bring such pleasure into their lives. Let's talk a little bit about the areas that can happen.
As I was teaching, the #1 reason that they came into our lab, whether their children or grandchildren, said, you better learn how to run a computer because, we want to send you an email and perhaps even send you some pictures of, the grandkids.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
that was email is probably one of the most common activities for the seniors to want to learn.
Okay.
And then it evolved into a whole bunch of other stuff, like Facebook became very popular, Skype became very popular, and with the iPads, FaceTime, and some of that stuff.
Well, and you can do so many creative things with photos, photo albums. You can tell your own story with word processing.
Oh, yeah.
It adds hours of activity enjoyment to a life, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have just a quick word to say about an app? What is an app if people are using apps?
Well, apps are, for example, if you have an iPhone that has the weather app, and you open up the weather app, that's it. It's just an app so you can watch the weather. Compared to if you purchase Microsoft Office, which is referred to as a program/software, then it's more comprehensive where you have Word, Excel, PowerPoint. So the difference between the two is an app is pretty much one application. Where a program or software is several applications within the same.
Okay, that's a very good explanation. We are going to put on screen your contact information, Wayne, so viewers can access it and get in touch with you for questions. Could you please give us your final thoughts on being more computer literate and enjoying our computers?
Well, this is one of the things that I put on the whiteboard. It used to be the chalkboard in the classroom was, number one, be patient.
Love it.
Number two, practice, practice, practice. So if you really want to be good at doing an Excel spreadsheet, for example, you have to practice. And then number three, you really don't need to know it all, because as we're sitting here the last few minutes, there's been some changes. So you don't need to know it all. And then the last one I just added here is that, PC stands for personal computer, but you also have your own personal computer right up here. And it's so important to keep it tuned up, and so continue to use the technology and even venture out and do some new stuff.
Sure. That is a wonderful plan to follow, Wayne. I certainly appreciate you being here today and for clearing up this information technology for us.
Okay.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
And whether you are watching this program on YouTube or on television, we certainly hope you will always remember, please live and learn.
Hi, welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachia, and I'm the host today. And I have two really great guests who are from the city. We're going to talk about the 1997 sort of freak snowstorm that paralyzed parts of South Central and Lincoln. That snowstorm happened over the weekend of October 25 and 26. And Lincoln got over 13 inches of snow, and it was wet and heavy. But parts of South Central Nebraska, like places like Davenport, got 23, 24 inches. It was really a devastating snowstorm. It kind of paralyzed big section of eastern Nebraska. A lot of people were without power. My two guests are Tom Cassidy, who's Lincoln's public safety director. At the time, you were chief of Lincoln Police, and Jerry Jorge, who's the park superintendent. And both of these gentlemen were really involved in the sort of response and recovery efforts during that storm. And so welcome. Thanks for coming to the show today.
Thanks. Sure.
Tom, you were just talking a little bit before we started rolling tape about there were, 100,000 people were without power?
That's right. On the day after the storm, that's about what we were facing, and it lasted a long time. So many people were without power for the most of the week, and it affected tens of thousands of people deep into that week after the storm.
And so what are a couple of things that we learned from that storm right off the bat?
Huge lessons learned. We had 2 four-wheel drive vehicles at the police department. Today, virtually everything that we have out there in our rolling stock, our police cruisers, is all-wheel drive. You'll see a lot of Ford Explorers, Ford Tauruses that are all-wheel drive. We recognize that it's just not wise in this kind of climate not to have a greater number of all-wheel drive vehicles so we can get around. But a lot of other lessons. The most important one to me was we realized that we were woefully ill-prepared for the kinds of shelter needs that emerged. And we dealt with it. I mean, by hook and by crook, we managed to get through it. But in the future, we'll be better prepared. We know that we're going to confront some complex problems that no one had anticipated back in 1997.
I think we have some tape that we got from our friends at channels 10, 11, some archival video of that storm, and we might be able to see what's going on here. I'm not sure where they shot this, but virtually the entire city looked like this. Jerry, as a sort of a tree guy, when you see this, does your heart kind of break?
It does, it really does. Actually, we spent some time even downtown because streets were blocked downtown, oddly enough. But the residential areas, the older neighborhoods that had the huge trees, it took us days to get some of those sites cleared. And obviously it was concern, public safety vehicles, emergency vehicles trying to get through. So even as of early as Saturday night of the storm, we had folks out at 11 p.m. starting to deal with the downed trees. So, and then ultimately, I think back then we probably had about 90,000 public trees to deal with. We have more today, so it was very chaotic the first couple days, but I think we got a good handle on it.
Well, and as I remember that storm, it came in from the west, and so about what time on Saturday night did folks in your position start realizing we may be having a problem here? Do you remember that at all?
I do. My recollection is it was about 1 a.m. that I got my first phone call from the duty commander at the police department telling me that we were starting to get some power outages. And I looked outside and I saw that we were getting some pretty good snow, but I lived at a brand new subdivision where the utilities are all above ground and the trees were saplings, and I thought, oh, that's nice, an early snowstorm, and I went back to bed. So probably around 2 o'clock, about an hour later, I got another call basically alerting me that this was a pretty big deal.
Well, when my personal memory is it was about midnight, a transformer behind my house, and we live by the country club, blew, and it was sparking and everything, and our power was down by then, but we had a hardwired into the wall, like 1940s phone, and it still worked. And I called 911 to tell them about this power thing, and the dispatcher said, "Thanks for letting us know you're 200th in the queue." And I was like, oh, this is not a good thing. And so in a situation like that where the transformers has blown and because a street tree has come down, is that, whose responsibility is that then to start dealing?
Sure. Well, City Parks and Rec, the forestry certainly is, we're responsible for all the right-of-way trees along the street. So anything is certainly in front of the sidewalk, and then sometimes even 3 or 4 foot behind the sidewalk. Those are public trees, and we deal with them. Like I said, we realized early on that we had to get out and start working on the downed trees because it's obstructing traffic. One of the things that we realized is we had a lot of electric doors, overhead doors on our garages that didn't work because we had no power. So first thing we had to do was manually open those doors to get our equipment out. And so that was kind of a telltale about this is going to be quite a project for us.
So in terms of people power, how many Parks and Rec employees were called in, and then did you have to get like local arborists and stuff to come help, or how did that work?
Sure. Well, so back then we probably ultimately, I'm talking probably Monday morning now, we had about 125 full-time staff in our whole department, Parks and Recreation, and I would say at least 100 of those 125 were involved in some manner dealing with this disaster. Ultimately, we ended up contracting with Lincoln Electric System, a lot of arborists coming in from the outside to help us, and even we were in the need of even having large tub grinders come in a few days later to deal with all the debris. We had about 8 to 10 sites, park sites, that dealt with all the tree debris. Some were sanctioned, some were not. People were very interested in getting rid of all the debris. I mean, it covered sidewalks and yards and backyards and trees, street trees. So they were very anxious to take it somewhere. So the North 48th Street landfill got quite a bit. We had a major dump site location at Star City Shores, about 33rd and Highway 2. That was the south location, and that size of that parking lot probably got filled up at least about 3/4 with tree debris.
Well, and then I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but there was like National Guard or somebody came and helped pick things up later. And I know on campus, I was working at the university then, and you know, we estimated we lost 2,000 trees, and another 6,000 or trees and shrubs were pretty badly damaged. And it was just this all-out effort to get everything cleaned up, because it was the Oklahoma game was the because we have priorities. But I mean, everybody just sort of seemed to pull together, which was kind of an interesting thing to watch fold out. And I don't know, from your perspective, were there a lot of citizen aid going on there?
Kim, there really was. About 4 a.m., I headed out from my home. I had a brand new four-wheel drive Jeep. And I spent my first hour or so picking up other key people, like our 911 center director, one of my police captains, ferried a few people down to the Emergency Operating Center. And we had activated the EOC, and I think myself and the emergency manager were the only people there for a while, and mainly because people couldn't get out. Right. So we were sending our resources around to pick up key people, like Mayor Johans, for example, other people that work in the EOC, to get them all down there and assembled. The National Guard turned out at our request to help. They had Humvees, which was fabulous. We were pairing up police officers with National Guardsmen in those bigger, high-clearance, all-wheel drive Humvees. And basically, we were going around in the first several hours getting people like doctors, nurses, police officers, firefighters, so that we could get them to where they needed to be to work. Because, streets were down, a lot of people had garage door problems, just like Jerry described. And phone service was out for a huge number of people. It wasn't just electricity. If you're in the part of the city with overhead utilities, landline phones were down. And, the cell phone was still fairly new at that time. It was a consumer product in the early 1990s, I suppose, but not nearly the penetration of cell phones that you had in 1997 that you have today. But cell sites had the same problems. A lot of power outages there. What was running was overwhelmed. Really, the only effective communication that we had in the city was the police radio system, which kept on ticking just fine. So, we were handing out portable radios to National Guardsmen so that we had some communication.
Right, and as I remember, Scott Young at KFOR kind of played the hero role there, because he was on the air for a good long time, sort of telling people this is what's going on, and I know that there were a lot of sort of impromptu news conferences with the mayor and with other people saying, giving people information, because that sort of becomes your currency, is information about what's happening, and the people who have it are pretty rich and pretty lucky. Yeah.
And we got lots of volunteers. We asked for volunteers, people that had four-wheel drive pickups, SUVs, high clearance vehicles, because we just needed help getting key people to the workplace. And we got a lot of help from that. Lincoln's Amateur Radio Club. A lot of good volunteers stepped forward, in addition to those of us that were government employees and National Guard members that helped out a lot in the first couple of days to get us running.
When you were saying you realized how many people are kind of live alone and really have no help, and that became kind of a priority, is helping people, access their medical devices or whatever, and that was a surprise to the city.
It really was. We set up 2 emergency shelters, one at Nebraska Wesleyan University, the other one at Pershing Auditorium. And what we discovered is that the people that needed that shelter were basically people that had no other options. They didn't have family, close friends here in Lincoln. A lot of them were elderly or infirm or had mobility problems, huge amount of medical need. So we were dispatching police officers to literally break into homes to get oxygen tanks and medications and other kinds of medical equipment for people that we were sheltering at these locations. And it took us a while to get organized because we just hadn't anticipated this need. And we also hadn't anticipated the need for pets. There are people that aren't leaving their home without their dog or their cat or their turtle or their parakeet. So we hadn't anticipated that. Some of the things that we thought were in place, we thought existed, like you could get on the phone and you could get a couple of thousand cots and bedrolls. No. And we learned a tremendous amount from this storm that's going to help us in the future. And it guides a lot of things that we do today. For example, we're building a new radio system, new public safety radio system here in Lincoln. And I guarantee you that remembering where we would have been without a well-engineered system in 1997 is part of what's going on as we've been planning for that new system.
Jerry, you tell me about some of the tree replacement. I know it wasn't a one-to-one replacement, but what did we learn about some of our tree, policies that we have now?
Right. So back in '97, we probably had resources to replace about one for every tree loss during that storm. We're inching up closer to closer. We're 2-to-1, less than 2-to-1 replacement now. We lost several thousand trees over there during that period of time. And quite honestly, we still have some effects of that today because some of that tree damage is still out there. And we had a storm recently that kind of showed that as well. And so today now we've got some opportunities, some grant funding. There's a 2 for Tree program through Lincoln Electric System where folks can donate, and the Lincoln Water System as well, to donate dollars for trees. And also there's a tree voucher that homeowners can apply for to help with if they want to replace a tree in the right-of-way in front of their house. So there's several opportunities now for the public to get engaged as well.
Great. I want to thank both of you for coming, and I hope that the lessons that we learned, that we kind of never have to implement them again, because we never want to go through a storm like that again. But I'm glad that we learned some things, and actually that's a good way to end the program. That I just want to remind everyone, it's never too late to live and learn.
Here she comes, Cloudy Kate. She's on the move 'cause she can't be late. Everybody grab a friend. The show wagon comes from the fence. Clippity-clap, clippity-clap. Kate is shouting, giddy-up. Riding in with Old Flash T. Reggie too, and you and me. Hurry up now, we can't wait. Here she comes, Calamity Kate. Calamity! Calamity! Calamity Kate!
And today we have with us some very exciting guests: George Churley, Puppeteer, Laura Mooney of the Nebraska History Museum, and we have a wonderful display at the Nebraska History Museum. What motivated you to do this, Laura?
Well, it all started about 4 years ago when George contacted us about his wonderful collection of puppets. So we were just thrilled with the opportunity to be able to collect them for our permanent collection. And as we started cataloging them, we decided we had to do an exhibit. So over the last few years, we've been preparing the puppets and doing research and finding extra photos, working with you to gather some costume and other mementos from the show, and it's finally ready for the public, so we're so excited.
I saw a picture of you in the newspaper, and it seemed like you were having surgical gloves. I mean, is that how carefully you take care of your treasures?
Yes, we are very careful with them, and we use gloves to protect them from the natural oils that are just on everybody's hands. And,
oh, yeah.
yeah, so we take extra good care of them.
And George, you donated all of your puppets, your many, many puppets. Why did you do that?
Well, about 10 years after I stopped doing the puppets, we built a house. And at that point, I didn't know what to do with the puppets. And I contacted Jack Literate out at Storm Museum, where we'd performed a number of times. And Jack suggested I contact the Nebraska Historical Society and see if they would be interested.
How many did you have at that point in time?
Between 35 and 50.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And anyway, so I told my family about that, and my kids, who were grown at the time, but they still said, no, you can't get rid of the puppets. So I held on to them for another 25 years. And then as we started to prepare to downsize, I wanted to get rid of the puppets. And I didn't want to throw them away. And I took Jack's advice 25 years later, contacted Laura, and was delighted that she was happy to receive them. And it's just nice that they have a new home, and they've done such a wonderful job.
It is an extraordinary exhibition, really amazing. Now, we're going to take a quick look at Don't Touch That Dial, George Churley and the Calamity Kate. Folks, so watch this. There's the museum, and where's it located?
We're at 131 Centennial Mall North. That's the corner of Centennial Mall and P Streets here in downtown Lincoln.
And it's been remodeled, and it's really gorgeous. As you
Yes,
first
it is.
walk in, there's people there to help you.
So this is the entrance to the exhibit with one of the early photos from the show showing a variety of the puppets.
There's Silent Orb.
Oh.
And Bill.
Sheriff Bill on the left, and Silent Orb, and Silent Orb is now silent. He passed away a couple years ago. And of course, Calamity Kate's Cartoon Corral, 3:30 p.m. every day during the
That's
week,
right.
Monday through Friday. We did that, George, for it started in 1957 until 1980, so a long time. And there's my outfit, which does not fit anymore. But it was well made, and it has lasted very, very good. It was a very good suede. And of course, the big hair, the big bubble hair, but that was the big deal back in the 50s and 60s and 70s and so forth. So, and of course, we had to change the costume periodically so it didn't get too boring. So I got a whole variety of things, but I always loved the pants because they're so comfortable to be in. And then we always asked the little kids what they were going to be when they grew up. And the interesting thing is, some of those kids whom I can find who are now well into their 50s and 60s, they can tell me what they said they were going to be. And what is this?
Looks like a T-shirt.
Well, yeah, that's the one we had for the little kids, don't you remember? We gave that, and John Michael Daly would be wearing that little T-shirt all the time. Yes, and tell us about you now, George.
Well, let's do the puppets, do the original puppets. And there's a shot of Reggie and Flash and you and John Michael Daly and my daughter Becky. She's a little older now.
And one of our favorite puppets, of course.
Yeah, little Reggie.
Do the voice, George.
That's the voice. My name is little Reggie. I'm very bright. I was the adult.
This is Butch Nielsen, my best friend forever. And he was the original Flash, and he was very instrumental in developing characters for the show, and he also wrote for it.
Yeah, and he wound up being the head of the theater department down at Natchitoches, Texas. Yeah, he's amazing. And then we created
Little Reggie's Quiz Kids.
Yeah, Little Reggie's Quiz Kids. And of course, our dear Dale Holt, the Reverend Dale Holt, who had For Children Only, FCO, on every Sunday morning. Yeah. And of course, we all know what that was, don't you?
Was that Romper Room?
Romper Room, right.
And there's Morty Mouse.
There's Morty Mouse.
How about that?
Okay, how long is this display going to be up now?
It'll be up through June 17th of next year, so there's lots of time for people to come down and see it.
And it's all free.
It is.
Which is really amazing. Then what happens is you come and you look at this beautiful room that they have designed. I'm really very impressed. You walk right into the theater. And what's in the theater?
We have some clips from the show. You'll be able to see the opening and closing theme song, clips from Little Reggie's Quiz Kids, and some fun history and background that you provided as well. So visitors will enjoy seeing that as well.
Okay, now would you elaborate a little bit about when you take a display down, then what happens to it? Where does it go and how do you handle that?
Well, we have a lot of the puppets cataloged already and they're available in our online database. So they'll live in that online database so people can see them from anywhere in the world. But the puppets themselves, they're going to go into some special storage boxes designed by our conservators at the Gerald R. Ford Conservation Center, which is in Omaha. And one of the really interesting things is in order to preserve them long term, they have put nitrogen gas into these boxes that will enable us to hopefully better preserve them long term. Oxygen is something that causes deterioration over time. So, so this will be
nitrogen?
Yes, yes.
I thought that was dangerous.
It wouldn't be good if we were just breathing nitrogen, but it will be contained in a special box for the puppets.
And then, so they're stored in Omaha then, or are they back at the Nebraska History Museum?
They'll be stored at the Nebraska History Museum, and then we'll have them available for future exhibitions that we may want to do, or for researchers that want to come in and look at them.
Well, how much room do you have for storage?
We have quite a bit. We have over 100,000 objects just stored in our museum, so we have special compacting storage shelves, and everything's boxed or in cabinets, and we have everything labeled so we can quickly go find things as we need them.
What, in your opinion, is the most unusual display that you've had or donation that you have made? Can you think about that?
Oh, there's so many over the years. It's always wonderful just to see what new is going to be coming in and what people just call about spur of the moment. So this was certainly a really fun one, and we've had many others over the years, everything from quilts to textiles and military items, so it's a lot of fun.
So for our viewers who are watching, they may have something they may like to donate. We're all going to go, you know, one time or another, and you probably have some things that might be of some value. How would a person proceed then if they want to donate? And what do you take and what do you not take?
Well, we collect things that relate to Nebraska history, so it could be a wide variety of things. So it's always just best for people to contact us and we can begin conversations about what they may have. We go through a process where we review things and talk as a committee about new acquisitions. But go to our website, history.nebraska.gov, and that will give you some suggestions of how to contact us.
Well, now would this be appropriate? Say somebody had something from World War I. Now, how would that apply to the Nebraska History Museum? Does there have to be a connection then?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
So we collect things that do have a connection to Nebraskans or places in Nebraska. So yes, everything in our collection has some sort of association with Nebraska history.
Yeah, and again, how often do you change the exhibits?
You know, every couple months we generally have some new display either going up or a traveling exhibit coming in, so we'll have some new things in November, again in January. So again, look at our website for new upcoming exhibits and events that we're having.
Okay, and George, here are some samples of your, now is this a stick puppet? You take one too. Okay, so we'll all be puppet. Was this a stick puppet? What is it?
Yeah, this is from one of the live shows called Beginnings in Men's, in which a puppet, Dr. Do-Nothing, makes puppets, but they don't come to life. And he realizes that his sidekick has a zipper front and a head, and he pulls out the zipper and out comes a hand. He realizes the heart of a puppet is a human hand. So he gets 3 kids from the audience after he creates these to be the hearts in these puppets. And with those children, we do the 3 little pigs. And a teacher, usually, or an adult as the big bad wolf. So
Why do you think children like puppets so much?
I don't know. That's a good question. I really don't know.
Well, maybe because they can do something about it. I mean, they can actually have a little hand puppet or whatever.
Yeah, they like doing the puppets, yes, very much. Yes.
Well, it is an extraordinary exhibit, and it'll be open until June of next year. There it is, the Nebraska History Museum. It's just a half a block off O Street, and it's right across the street from the Children's Museum.
Right.
A lot of people seem to know where that is, so just go a little, across the street and there it'll be. And our thanks to George Churley and Laura Mooney of the Nebraska History Museum. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn more about the Nebraska History Museum. And here's Dave Landis to say goodbye.
Now our time with you is through. Hope we made a friend or two. But for now we'll have to say goodbye.